The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Welcome, and I messed that one up. Welcome to this week's show of Weighted Donuts. I'm Wayne Unger. I'm here with my co-host Wyatt Unger. Yes, we are related. And today I have returning guest. It's been a while, but I have a returning guest, Joe Casale. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hi, Wayne. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Joe and Wyatt and I have already exchanged all the niceties of how we are and this and that, so we're going to spare everybody that. So I tell you what, so let's, being how you and Wyatt and myself are Yankee fans, let's jump right into it. And so I watched part of the second game against Seattle. I watched a good part of the first game against Seattle. And if, I've been railing all along is, their hitting philosophy, it stinks. And it's not only them, it's a lot of other teams as well. When you get two strikes on you, you need to shorten up. You need to just try to keep the bat on the ball. The big guys, even in that kind of situation, the big guys with the right pitch will still put it over the wall. And what it does, it keeps you alive. It extends the pitch count. You may get a base hit. We saw how well base hits work in the first Yankee game against Seattle. And then yesterday, I did not watch yesterday's game. And neither did Wyatt, but I look at it, and this guy threw a one-hitter, but only 67 of his 103 pitches were strikes. So I'm curious, Joe. Were you watching this game?
Yeah, I watched the game. Gilbert pitched a good game, but I think the Yankees are in a situation where when you haven't hit all year and you haven't made adjustments, as happens over a 162-game season, occasionally you're going to catch a guy who's really, really good on that day, but the Yankees have kind of given up their mulligans at this point. I mean, they don't have the luxury of catching a guy in a really, really good day. I mean, they're now 1-9 in opportunities to sweep series. They're just – look, I watched them play in spring training, and I told a friend of mine they look like an 82 to 85 win team. And a friend looked at me like I was crazy, but I just didn't see this team being very good because there's so many things they aren't good at that just hitting a lot of home runs was not going to solve the problem. And the season has kind of played out the way I thought it would play out. I mean, there isn't really been a whole lot of surprises. They're not a very good team. It's not a well-constructed roster. Things such as base running, in which they're the worst in baseball at, defense among the worst in baseball, making contact with runners in scoring position, all of these things that good teams do, they don't do well. So it wasn't like and even this year with home runs, 2/3 of their home runs are solo home runs. So it's just not a well-constructed team, and that's the reason why they really can't go off on one of these streaks to get themselves back in. Division, first of all, and everybody's 3 games out of the wild card, but that's not the issue. The issue is the number of teams you have to jump over.
It's very true, and the other thing is, and I've heard this, you've heard me say this before, a team can slug their way to the postseason, but it's rare that slugging team wins it all because the competition and the pitching gets better. And so the slugging can get exposed, and if you don't have other ways to create offense. And so, the reason a slugging team can get to the playoffs is because they beat up on the weaker teams. You know what? They haven't done well against the weaker teams either, and that's also a reason why they're sitting close to 500. Now, Wyatt, last week this came up again, as well on my show, and Wyatt he's miles ahead of me. He pointed out that they do have a softer schedule coming up, but they need to take advantage. So, Wyatt, jump in any time.
I don't think that this schedule that's easier means a thing, because you see, every time we take the first two games of the series, it's like the third game comes on, and I'm like, do I want to watch this guaranteed loss? Because this team does not have the killer instinct to sweep series, and when you can't sweep a series, you can't start a win streak, and losing the third game of a series, it seems like it happens so often to us right when the next series we're playing a powerhouse team, and it just killed our momentum not being able to sweep Kansas City because we didn't have it in us, and then we go to Boston with a little less momentum, and we just got I don't know if it was we got shut down, we couldn't pitch, or if it was just both. Because there are times this team can pitch but can't hit but can't pitch, and then there are days that we can't do either. There's never days that, like, I think game one against Seattle was the first game all season where we were effectively able to do both hitting and pitching at a good level for 9 innings. This team, they can't go on a run. They can't play two good consistent series. But you know what? I think that this Houston series is the change of things, because Houston has not been good against bad teams lately, so that kind of plays perfectly for us.
We can only hope. My thing is, you know what? If you win every series, or just about every series, you'll be okay. You can't sweep them all, but yeah, this team can use a little bit of a winning streak, which would entail sweeping a couple of series in a row. So, Joe, do you think the Yankees are? I mean, there's still 2 weeks to go, almost 3 weeks to go. Do you think there are 3 weeks to go? Do you think the Yankees will sell if they're still at 500 and still have to leapfrog over 5 or 6 teams?
Well, they probably won't, but they should. I mean, I think that this team has too many holes to augment making trades and acquiring one or two guys. They're not one or two guys short from being – they may make the playoffs if they acquired one or two guys, but they're not getting to the World Series. They're not winning a World Series because there's just too many holes. And really, the only way you're going to reconstruct this team is to deconstruct this roster. Now, they may feel that they can't do that because they're all in on the players, they're all in on the payroll, they're all in on their decisions, but that just is another bad baseball decision because, look, they're already selling tickets at 50% off. I mean, they had 50% off sale prices for the Angels series, and that featured the guy everybody in baseball wants to see in Shohei Ohtani. Now they're doing, free drink, hot dog, and discounted ticket prices for the upcoming Red Sox series. So that tells you that fans are not buying into this team. So, and the reason why the fans are not buying into the team is not just because it's not very good, but they don't see a plan. Because there is no plan. There is no plan to make this team better. So I think if you deconstructed this team, you actually would be a lot like 2016 when they did it, and fans started coming out to the games again because they saw a plan. Right now, you're not seeing a plan. I mean, they're too heavily right-handed hitting. They are among the worst teams in baseball in hitting fastballs 95 miles an hour and above. They're the worst hitting team in baseball in sliders. So what you're seeing now are teams just throwing fastball pitchers and sliders against this team, and they're inept. It's just not there's just too many holes. You have a major problem at shortstop because it isn't just that Gleyber Torres is a below-average defensive player. He's fallen off the map offensively. He is the lowest exit velocity in the league this year from the plate. I mean, his fall, and it's another problem that the Yankees have internally, is that every one of their younger players at all levels of the organization have regressed. I mean, that's a developmental issue. I mean, Clint Frazier unplayable? Why is Gleyber Torres unplayable? Why did it take 3 years for Gary Sanchez to become a player again? I mean, these are, if I own the team, those are the questions I have. And it speaks to the direction that you're going in. And, you know, is buying at the trade deadline going to change that? No. But deconstructing this roster will. And that's what the Yankees should be doing. I mean, look, they have 4 number 5 starters and Garrett Cole in the rotation. And I know people are saying, well, Luis Severino's going to come back. One thing we know about the Yankees, every player that gets hurt takes longer than expected to come back, and in most instances get hurt during rehab and sets their time back. So the idea of planning on Kluber, who won't be back until September, if at all, planning on Severino, that's fool's gold to me. To me, you have to look at the teams in your division and say, what are we going to do, not just this year, but in the future, to beat Toronto, Tampa, and Boston? And that is, you're going to have a more athletic roster. You're going to have to play better defense. You're going to have more left-handed hitting and some balance. You're going to have deeper starting pitching. The Yankees have none of that. And so I really don't see how making a trade or two is going to improve anything. Whereas I think if you can find a way to fix Aroldis Chapman enough to trade him, then you can begin a process of acquiring some players. And again, this is where your internal scouting has to work, because you have to find guys at the AA and AAA level that you think project into being good major leaguers. And that is something that we don't know if the Yankees are good at that anymore, given all of the changes they have made internally to become a more analytically driven organization. And so they're in a pickle. And it's why I would sell at the deadline, because it's not their year, but it's something that I don't think the organization from the owner on down are committed to doing.
No, I agree. And it's so, and speaking of, how they've become so analytically driven, Brian Cashman was asked a year or two ago, like, why are you going away from left-handed hitting? And he, his response was, one, because it was the shift for one, but and also he said they're looking for players that can go the other way. Figuring in Yankee Stadium, the porch is short enough, but not every hitter does that. Judge is very good at going the other way, but other than a guy like Stanton, who it doesn't matter where he is, Stanton would hit home runs in the old Yankee Stadium. He's just a monster like that. I think also, they need to take the chance. They need to take a risk, and they need to put Stanton out in the field. They need to see if they can even get him to play left field, even if it's 2 days a week. They need to open up that DH spot, take the chance, put him in left field. He was never a terrible outfielder. He was always at least an average outfielder with at least an average arm. And you know what? You need to give Miguel Andujar a chance to hit every day, because whenever he gets some repetition in the lineup, he shows that he is capable of hitting like he did in his rookie year. Aaron Judge, I think it's starting to sink in with more Yankee fans that, yes, it might actually be a good idea to let, Aaron Judge go, trade him. But, will management do that? I don't know.
Well, I think sometimes you have to be real and understand this is the New York Yankees. They don't need to have a payroll lower than it's been since 2005. So the idea of saying let's trade Aaron Judge because we want to stay in the self-directed payroll parameters is ridiculous. Just if you can keep Aaron Judge and build around him, you just need a bigger payroll. And to to the payroll for the Yankees this year is lower than it's been any year since 2005. The revenues are higher than it's ever been. So they're still generating revenues. The idea that this team needs to curb payroll, that's an owner-driven desire. But it's not rooted in any logic. I mean, the Los Angeles Dodgers are a major market team, and they're not limiting payroll. The idea is to build a team around Aaron Judge and build a team that has some flexibility. Right now, the Yankees don't have flexibility. They play a ton of players out of position. The shortstop is not a shortstop. Miguel Andujar is not an outfielder. Everybody is out of position. Even Gary Sanchez is not an everyday major league catcher. And so you have huge problems in center field. It's just a bad roster. And, the idea is to fix it. I mean, one of the things I've always wondered why they wouldn't do with Giancarlo Stanton is to have him work at becoming a first baseman. He's big enough. It doesn't require him to exert himself in terms of using his legs as much as covering a wide part of the outfield would be if he was a left fielder at Yankee Stadium. And it would be a way, and you can't do this in season, obviously, but it's something that the Yankees could do in the offseason to get him to become an everyday player. Because first base, first of all, at 6'6", he would be a great target, especially for the infielders, and you have an opportunity to get him in the lineup every day. Because I agree with you. I mean, to have him as DH and to keep that spot, tied up for a team that has so many mismatched parts, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And now the Yankees are talking about not being able to have him in the outfield for another month until they come to Miami. I mean, the season's almost over then. I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But a lot of the decisions that they've made the last couple of years have not made a lot of sense, and this year it's all come home to roost. That's why I think if they were really being honest with themselves and reflected, they would say it's really time for us to begin to deconstruct this roster. And when people say, well, they don't have any tradable assets, that's nonsense. You mean to tell me everybody can be traded in this game, Wayne? I mean, it's just a matter of, A, how much money you want to take back in a deal, or B, how desperate the other team is. I mean, you think that Aroldis Chapman, if he gets fixed, would not be a trade target of a team looking to make the playoffs? Of course he would. Well, nobody's saying you're getting back an all-star in return, but what if you get back a very good AAA player who needs a chance to be in the majors, and you offload a year and a half of his salary? It's those kind of moves that they would be able to make. The Cubs are in sell mode. Think about a guy like Anthony Rizzo if he was going to be available. His left-handed bat, his defense at first base, it makes the Yankees a better team. You say, well, what do you do with Luke Voit? You trade him. I would trade Luke Voit for Anthony Rizzo tomorrow. Not because Luke Voit is a bad player, but because he doesn't fit on a team that is loaded with right-handed hitters. And so, there's a lot of things they can do. The question is, will they do it?
Yeah, but Anthony Rizzo is a free agent at the end of the year.
And the Yankees could certainly sign him. You see, I mean, this goes back to my point.
But I disagree with some of your points. So I don't look at Aaron Judge as a guy to build around because, I mean, he hasn't been healthy since 2017.
But he's healthy. He's been healthy this year.
He's been healthy this year.
And if you're going to trade him, you are trading the best player on your team. And what you're saying is that we are going to be bad for the next 3 or 4 years because we're never going to acquire a guy. And, most of these trades, when you look at trades in all sports, when you trade the best player that gets traded in the deal, that's the team that usually wins the deal. So the Yankees are not going to win an Aaron Judge trade. They'll get back a lot of young talent, and you hope they prosper, but it's a big risk. And also the way the Yankees have marketed Aaron, go that route, you're telling your fan base, we don't have anybody in that universe that we're marketing like this now. We're just another
I
team.
understand, but you know what? You see, at one, it's not only the money, but I look at signing him because he's a free agent. He's going to be a free agent after next year. So building around him and signing him to an extension if he'll sign, or signing him to a free agent contract when he becomes a free agent. Don't forget, he'll be 30 years old at that point, and I look at it as another Ellsbury Hicks contract. That's number one. Number two, it's not only paying the extra luxury tax when you go over that threshold, okay? The other ramifications are it affects your draft position. It also affects what you get back in compensation. If you make a qualifying offer to a free agent of one of your own free agents, and it also affects your international signing money. So it's just not a matter of paying. It's just not a matter of like they got the money, they should pay it. There are other ramifications which are important to building the team. So,
but if you look at the Yankees drafting in the last 7 years, it's been terrible. So the Yankees holding on to draft picks while the parent club is a 500 team really doesn't help. Unless you're changing the management completely, if it's the same management and the same organizational philosophy, holding on to the draft picks, they don't help the Yankees at all.
I mean,
look at the last 5 years. Look at the last 5 years alone of just first-round picks of the Yankees. It's been awful. And it speaks to a bigger problem, what they have internally. And, that's why they're in such a problematical thing. I mean, the Aaron Judge debate is a very legitimate one because there are good points on both sides. It's a very good point to say it's a year and a half to go before he's a free agent. It's going to be 30 to 31 when he is. This is the time to deal him when his value is at its highest. And that makes a lot of sense. But then I look at the people who would be making that decision right now and their record on getting younger players back in return and their draft history and what they've done the last 3 years in terms of developing talent. And I have zero confidence that whatever return they would get for Aaron Judge, that the players would develop out to be good players here. If it was Theo Epstein making the decision, I feel a lot differently. But it's just, that's the pickle the Yankees are in right now. And I think when you're an owner like Hal Steinbrenner, who's trying so hard not to be as far, question Hal Steinbrenner has to ask himself is, does he still believe Brian Cashman's vision for this team is the right vision? And to me, that's an open question. I've written in the past, I think that the Yankees need a change. I think 20 years in the same gig is not healthy in sports. I think that you need fresh ideas. I think you need a fresh philosophy. But I don't know if Hal Steinbrenner is going to pull that trigger. That's why, and let's say if he is leaning toward doing that, it wouldn't make any sense to deal Aaron Judge at the trade deadline. It would be better to revisit it in the offseason if you have a new sheriff in town. So it's all of these questions that we're discussing, and they're all good and legitimate questions. That's the reason why I think the Yankees should be sellers at the deadline, because teams that are playoff caliber teams or championship caliber teams don't have all of these questions swirling around them.
I really think this might be the year that he cuts bait with Cashman. Now, Boone will not be back.
Right.
I am pretty certain of that, and I hope that Cashman will not be back either because, and I think that's what's also. I mean, Boone was. I'm pretty sure the deal was, okay, we like you, we like it, we like you, we like your philosophy and this and that, but here's the deal. This is how we operate, and without saying it in so many words, you're going to be a puppet. You're going to be a puppet manager. I'm sure it's put a much different way, but nonetheless, and that's what Aaron Boone is. So we don't know. If we don't know what kind of manager Boone is, but at this point, I don't want to wait, and I don't want to find out. So we need a manager who will be allowed to operate autonomously, and be cooperative. You want to be cooperative with the front office, but you want to be able to work autonomously. So. But yeah, a lot of questions. Wyatt, you got any final thoughts on the Yankees before we jump on to the next one?
So as far as being sellers, I don't think that they can be sellers because they're not trading until Cashman's gone. They're not trading anybody who is under contract for next year at the deadline. So our current free agents are Gardner, Britton, and Kluber, two of which are injured and one of which has zero value. We could not get the worst player in baseball for Brett Gardner. As far as trading Chapman, I just don't see him getting fixed with the All-Star break. I don't see him getting fixed by the July 30th trade deadline. And about Judge, I spoke about this last week. I'll just briefly restate it here. No Yankee fan wants it, but certain Yankee fans at this point know that this team is going to be even in a worse position than it is right now if we give him the 6-year, $200 million contract that he will probably command. And I don't think we should be – I know we said we shouldn't be sellers, but we shouldn't be buyers. Just play out this season and work in the offseason when there's going to be a lot of players available and a lot more teams will have interest in certain players on our team. And I think with a GM with the right brain would be able to have a good offseason there. And this team is not going to be fixed in one off season, but if we can get the right guy, because the right guy is not Cashman, but if we can get the right guy, I think he can take a step forward this year.
Thank you, Wyatt. So, Joe, let's unwork ourselves, because I know like I say, talking about this can work me up at times. Other times I'm like, I don't even care anymore. But today's a workup time. So let's talk about the off season. State of baseball. The CBA is up. You don't have high hopes for an agreement, do you?
It's the relationship between owners and players is the worst it's been in a lot of years. In the last CBA, the players settled for a lot of creature comforts, more off days, more hotel suites, all of these kind of things. They put a lot of the economic things on the back burner, and the owners clean their clock. I think there's a large segment of players today that are rightly refocused on the economics of the game and not the creature comforts. I think the way that they've tried to, change the game with regard to 7-inning doubleheaders and the runner on second and all of these other things, I think in a lot of ways have not made the players happy. I think one of the shots across the bow from the Players Association this year was the unwillingness to bend on the universal DH in exchange for additional teams in the playoffs, because the way baseball economics work is that owners really make their money in the postseason. The players are all paid from game 1 to game 162. After game 162, the players are not. Their salaries have already been paid, so whatever money they make from playoff money. The owners make the bulk of their money in the playoffs. So the players weren't willing to give the owners that grab bag over the DH. So that was basically an introduction to how difficult these labor negotiations are going to be. And you made a good point earlier before we got on air to discuss that the owner's concerned about losing money again. I mean, the players right now, they have no issues sitting out next year. That would be a big issue for the owners because, in essence, you'd be losing 2 years' worth of ticket sales in 3 out of the last 3 years. That's going to put a dent into a lot of teams. That's a leverage play for the players right now. So I think these negotiations are going to be really, really intense. I vacillate between saying there'll be no season next year or there'll be a deeply truncated season. I feel really strongly I'd be shocked if the season started on time next year. I just think the issues and the lack of trust are too paramount for them to get all this stuff cleared up. And so it's going to be a real test of wills coming up. And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens because the players are going to want a lot more than they settled for after the last CBA. And the owners will always cry poor mouth even before a pandemic. Post-pandemic, they're going to really cry poor mouth. And so it's, like I said, it's going to be a clash of wills.
Do you think that the players will here's something that's a little unorthodox and I think would really take the baseball owners for a loop? And do you think it would serve the players well to start lobbying politicians to look into the antitrust status that baseball has?
No, because Washington is enough of a mess the way it is right now, and the politics in Washington are in such dire situations. I mean, you have one political party that is actively looking to end democracy. So to have the players go to Capitol Hill, an environment that is not player-friendly, if we remember going back to the steroid hearings, to look to have the owners' antitrust exemption looked at, that would be a no-go. I think what the players need to do is just stay together and not settle for creature comforts and just bargain hard. And everything has a price in baseball. You want expanded playoffs. You want the universal we want the universal DH. You want more teams in the playoffs. We want expanded playoff money. You want players want more off days than owners want split doubleheaders. I mean, everything has a price. They're going to have to figure out, first of all, what they really want, and then secondly, what are the deal breakers? And I think the last negotiation, they were fixated on creature comforts. That's heaven for the owners. This time around, they should be fixated more on the direction of the game and on the economic issues. Because watching these 7-inning doubleheaders when fans are paying full price for tickets, that's a ripoff. Okay, that is the biggest swindle in sports right now. You are paying for a shorter product, and you're paying full price. That's ridiculous. The gimmick of having the base runner at second for extra innings was supposed to shorten the games. It's made the games longer. Those are gimmicks that don't work. Players should always fight for additional roster space. If you want to have openers, and all an opener is, it's not some novel baseball thought. All openers are doing is devaluing the price for starting pitchers. Why do I have to pay Garrett Cole $324 million if I have a guy open 50 games for me and there's no real arbitration figure in place for him? He's not a closer. He's not a setup guy. He's not a starting pitcher. So it's the cheapest way of going about it. So it's these kind of things. And so the players really need to, and I think they're doing this, given the decisions that they've even made internally of who they're bringing in to negotiate the deal and all of that. They're laser focused on the economics of the game. They also need to be laser focused on the direction the game is going, because in a lot of ways, baseball is unwatchable today. It's watching a game with three outcomes: home run, walk, strikeout. The athletes in baseball playing baseball today are better than they've ever been, yet we don't showcase their athleticism. The game really holds down their athleticism. It's just the game is a mess, and it needs to get cleaned up, and the players have the ability to do that or force the owners to assist in doing that in this negotiation. Now, whether they do it or not, remains to be seen, but I think that's an important thing, because the game is just not an enjoyable watch now. You really have to be a diehard baseball fan to watch a lot of the teams that play the games today. Even the Yankees, who for years were entertaining, are not an entertaining watch at all. And that has to change, because if it doesn't, the younger generation is not watching this game the way they should. And you can always pick out outliers, but by and large, it's an older population that's watching baseball. And the gimmicks are not going to bring younger viewers athleticism, excitement, energy. That's what's going to bring younger viewers.
Yeah, I think one of the main economic issues that the players need to focus on is owners, renewing contracts. In other words, you need 4 years, you need 4 years to get to arbitration, and the owners abuse the crap out of younger players that don't have the service time, and now it's affecting the older players, because now older players are getting hurt financially, because players, owners are like, well, you're like on the downside. I don't care that you used to, earn $10, $15 million. I'm not giving you anywhere near that, because I can bring in a young guy and there won't be that much difference. I'll take my chances, and I can renew him every year. And in 4 years, I can pay him what I would have paid you in 1 year. So
yeah, well, there's no question the economics of the game. I mean, even in holding back young players and not calling them up to reserve their arbitration status. I mean, all of those are significant issues, and those are the things the players have to be tackling. They have to be tackling the luxury tax, because if you're going to keep the Yankees and other big market teams down in the sense of it's a de facto salary cap. The Yankees say, hey, I don't want to keep paying this tax, but that's a player in free agency that's not going out after players. That hurts players. So, and if you're a major market team, you're tired of subsidizing small market teams. Why are the Yankees subsidizing the Pittsburgh Pirates? The Pirates are making money hand over fist. They show no inclination to want to keep players when they had a good team 4 or 5 years ago. And now they're back in rebuilding mode, and they're collecting all of this luxury tax money. If you're the Yankees or Red Sox or Dodgers, you're tired of paying into that pool. Now, will those teams break ranks? Will those teams break ranks and say, you know what? We're going to have to adjust this system because it doesn't work for us. We're tired of subsidizing the Royals and Marlins and Pirates and any other team that decides that they want to go that route. There has to be more of a floor for payroll. There has to be an incentive for a team to want to be good. Right now, there is not an incentive to be great because it will cost you too much money, and there's not an incentive to be good. There's an incentive to be good or poor. Poor for high draft picks and for luxury tax money. But there's a great in-between there. And, it's an entertainment product, Wayne, and if only 8 teams every year are really in it, it's not entertaining. And, I know baseball thought, well, adding the second wildcard team, everybody's within 2 or 3 games. But, fans sniff that out now. And they know, my team's within 3 games, but they have to jump 6 games. So my team's not a playoff team. So I'm not going to those games unless there's a guy in the other team that I really want to see play. I just thought it was really telling last week when the Yankees are selling 50% off tickets with Shohei Ohtani coming to town. I mean, that spoke volumes of what their internal ticket sales look like. Because if there's one team this year that you don't discount your tickets for, it's the Angels. And yet they did. That told me a ton about where the Yankees are internally. And I do agree with you, this could be the one year that Hal Steinbrenner, does think about cleaning house, because now it's affecting the bottom line. And unless you really believe the direction that Brian Cashman has for this team, it's not just this year, but in the future, it speaks for making a change. Because you're going to have to re-energize this fan base in the offseason, especially with an aggressive owner across the river now in Steve Cohen. So it's going to be, the offseason for the Yankees is going to be fascinating because there's going to be a lot of moving parts. And I do agree with you that Boone won't be back. His 4-year deal has expired. The team has been on the downside the last couple of years. And things that a manager can control are not well controlled there. His inexperience has shown, and there's only so much covering you can do for that. You can find, if you want to keep Cashman, you can find another analytically driven manager, even though I don't think that would be the direction the Yankees should go. If I was running the team, Theo Epstein would run the team, Buck Showalter would be the manager. That would energize the fan base. There are a few managers in the game that get more out of their talent, whether it's good talent or bad talent, than Buck Showalter. He's also got Yankee lineage. There would be an energy level there that would be increased than where it is right now. But I don't own the team, so I don't know. I don't know how Hal's going to go. But they definitely have to do something because you could be bad, Wayne. You can't be bad and boring. And the Yankees are bad and boring. And that is, in an entertainment business, that's a killer. When the Padres were bad, they were still trotting Fernando Tatis Jr. out there to see play. Now the Padres are good, and you've got Tatis Jr. and you've got young talent, and you see what's going on there. That's the direction the Yankees need to go. I may have thought they were there a couple of years ago with Judge and Sanchez and Torres, but, two of those three guys have kind of fallen off the map, and the other younger players have really not developed. I mean, Davy Garcia's got an 8 ERA in AAA. Clark Schmidt is always hurt. You don't really have anybody coming through the pipeline aside from Jason Dominguez, who's, years away.
Far away.
That really gets you excited. That gets you excited to say, you know what, we can stink this year, but look who we have coming up in the next year or two. You don't have that with the Yankees. So, those are the things that the Yankees are going to have to address this offseason to get the energy level back the way it was in 2017 and 2018, because it's not there now. And, that's going to have to get addressed, and we'll see how they decide to do that.
Yeah, I tell you, we're just about out of time. I know you got to go. Personally, I don't think Theo Epstein is the answer. I think he gets too much credit for a few moves, and a lot of he was put into good situations. He's made a ton of poor signing moves as well. And I don't want to see like a high profile, manager and general manager. I don't know if that would work. I'm okay with Showalter coming back, but Showalter too seems to get a little too powerful, from his chair. where he has affected front offices. I'd like to see something in unison, but I would take Showalter and just about any competent general manager. Also, listening to the Yankees vice president of analytics, he is clueless. You can just see how, he is turned this team into a video game, so to speak, with numbers. And the other thing, one other thing I want to touch on before I give Wyatt a shot, I don't think openers have really hurt starting pitching. I think any team would rather have a competent starter and be able to roll a starter out there. And Tampa introduced the opener because they didn't have the starting pitching. And I think other teams are not looking to it as like, hey, yeah, we can roll these guys out and save money. I think they just do it as an alternative to not having, depth of talent in the rotation. But you and I agree on, a lot of things. And yes, baseball and the team in general, philosophies just, they just have to change. So, Wyatt, you want to wrap it up?
I think that trying to copy Tampa's analytics-based system, I think that was the death of the New York Yankees, because you can't copy them if you don't have scouts at all levels at the same skill level, and we don't have that. So that really is what killed us, and now other things have come up, and now really not a lot of stuff is going our way. And I was either not born or very, very young and didn't even follow baseball when the Yankees were, aggressive and they made the moves that they needed to make. And now it's like, yeah, we have a lot of options, and we do have a lot of moves that would benefit us, but I can't count on even one good move being made for us to happen.
Yeah, I agree. So, Joe, always a pleasure. I know you gotta get going. Thank you for coming on. Wyatt and I hope to be doing this on a regular basis. We're doing good. I think this is our 4th week in a row, so we're staying consistent. So that means we're going to have you back.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, guys. It was a pleasure being with you.
All right. Thank you, Joe. You have a great day.
Thanks, guys. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the show. Look for us again next week, and have a great day, everybody.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.